Hello, fam. It's Mel Barrett. This is Something's Off Live, and you will notice that I'm here by myself without my partner in crime, Rebecca Lavoie, because she is totally swamped because she's been interviewing 50 Cent and all that. So if you missed it, Rebecca does interviews with a lot of the directors and producers who put out documentaries on Netflix, and she just interviewed 50 Cent for the new Diddy documentary that just dropped yesterday. So definitely go check out the documentary. I've only watched the first episode or so. It's excellent. I won't give you any spoilers. I'd love to know what you think of it. Hi, everybody that's coming in. So, not to go off all over the place and on tangents, I really do want to talk about this Brian Walshe case. But this is my first YouTube live. So, I'm sort of getting the hang of everything, and I may miss some of your comments. I'm so happy to see those of you who are here, who are members of Finding Serotonin. Little Neil, I think is, yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce your screen name, but Chris Denton, Little Neil, I'm glad you guys are here. I appreciate you. Right off the top, so we've been doing the show now for, I think it's been about a month. Um, we've been recording sometimes once or twice a week. Sometimes it's a little chaotic because there's so much going on with these trials that we cover and the cases that we've been covering, especially with all the Karen Reed stuff. But I just want to take a moment to tell you that we love you and that your support has been so extremely helpful. When we record audio, when we're doing podcasts and things like that, the editing is a little bit quicker because there isn't any video. So, but with this, I'm editing down video of our conversations and sometimes, syncing and doing all these weird things. And it's a lot more work than I usually do on my podcast, the in between. So all the tips that have been coming in, I cannot tell you guys how amazing it is, that the support that we're getting. It's really blowing my mind. I'm completely humbled by it. I'm so thankful for you. So I just want to say that right off the top. Um, and also all the new memberships. We've been saying this for a little while now. We aren't quite sure exactly how the memberships work with YouTube. Um, I know that with the live streams, you guys can do super chats and you can gift memberships and you have access to all that stuff. We're still figuring it out, so please bear with us. We're 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 old. No, I won't say Rebecca's old. I'm old. And we're trying to figure this all out. So again, I appreciate your patience. I appreciate you guys sticking with us. We love doing this. And I really miss Rebecca. I wish that she could be here because it's obviously easier to talk to one of your good friends about true crime. But you guys are all our good friends. And so I'm going to talk to you tonight and I'm going to try to not have so much glare on my glasses. Um, What else was I gonna tell you? So we're recording tomorrow. We're gonna record early. Obviously, our episodes come out on Fridays. Um, oh, thanks. Thanks for the fiver. I really appreciate that, honey kid. Um, but tomorrow we're probably gonna be recording one of those mega episodes. Rebecca has to be on a flight, so we're recording really early in the morning. But we're gonna be covering a lot of the updates that happen with Karen Reed adjacent stuff that's been happening since Thanksgiving, basically. So a lot of things have happened. There's also some Kelsey Fitzsimmons stuff out there. But tonight, what I wanted to do, I would love to be one of those people is able to sit down at from 9 o'clock in the morning until 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and cover the trial live. I'm sure there are going to be a few days where I can do that. Right now is not it's not happening for me, but I have been watching most of it. I've been taking a ton of notes, and I will be talking about it again with Rebecca because I need to catch her up on everything. So, for those of you who have been following the Brian Walsh case, we are in day 3 of the trial. Um, I didn't think I could be surprised, but I have been. So, what I want to do is give you guys sort of a brief recap of the past 3 days of this trial and then talk about some observations, talk about your thoughts on it. Is he guilty of first degree murder? I think that's the number one question. I'm trying to watch this trial as if I were on the jury. So I'm trying to watch it as if I don't know as much as I know about it, and I'm learning a lot. So, let's see. I haven't been able to watch any of the trial because I'm knee deep in watching Trump take nappy naps on live TV. Womp womp. Yeah, it's crazy to see him in those cabinet meetings where everyone's just sort of like praising him and he's nodding off. Um, how about those Google searches finding serotonin? Woo, we're gonna get into it. I mean, there are so many things swirling around the searches, and it's really difficult for me. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and break down the first 3 days, and then we're going to get into all that. So, I'm going to hold off on reading comments for a little bit while I go through this, and then we can get into the comments and talk about everything. But let me just pull up my notes real quick. Okay. So, the first day they picked the jury back in November. So we were full steam ahead on December 1st on Monday. That's when the trial started. My first observation before I give you guys the cliff notes is that Judge Diane Frenier is friggin' amazing. She is the complete antithesis of Auntie Bev. So if you were able to watch the Karen Reed trial, you will know that we talked a lot about the judge, which I don't think you should be focusing on the judge in trials like these. They're there to sort of keep things moving, to make sure that the lawyers are doing what they're supposed to be doing and that they're not overstepping their bounds and that the jury fully understands the law and how, trials work. We shouldn't have been talking about Bev as much as we were talking about Bev, but she made herself a talking point. So I love Diane Frenier. I love her. Rebecca was right about how she pronounces her last name because she's from New England. It's spelled Freniere, but we are in Massachusetts, and so it's pronounced Frenier. Okay. So day 1, pretty interesting openings, and I think that when I heard that Brian Walsh was pleading guilty to, um, dismemberment of a body hiding a body, dismembering a body, and also lying to the cops, my one question, and I'm sure you all have the same question, is how is he pleading not guilty to murder 1? But now I think I understand it. He's got a very good defense team. Tipton is his main attorney, and he's pretty well known in the area, and he's a pretty great guy. He's really good at what he does. And I would imagine as a defense attorney, this is like a horrible case to have to defend, but he's doing a great job. So prosecutors opened ADA Gregory Connor. It's rumored, I've heard he was one of those people that, refused to retry Karen Reed. It seems like this guy has, some ethics, which I love. He's pretty forceful. The ADAs on this case, they're all a little bit robot-y. We'll get to the other ADA who does a lot of the technical questioning of Nick Guarino, who makes an appearance, on the first day of trial, which I thought was really interesting. Nick Guarino, if you remember, is the tech guy, one of the tech guys, one of the state troopers from the Karen Reed trial, and he also worked on the Sandra Birchmore trial, and he was responsible for missing almost 40,000 text messages between Matthew Farwell and Sandra Birchmore, and I say he missed them. Um, I hope he missed them. I hope it wasn't intentional, I'll say that. Uh, Sorry, I'm a little congested. Hold on a second. Okay, so openings from the prosecution. Prosecution really hit on the fact that it seems like Anna and Brian's marriage was falling apart. She got her dream job at Tishman Speyer in DC. It doubled her salary. Brian stayed in Cohasset with the three boys because he basically was on house arrest for the federal supervision that when he was awaiting sentencing for the Warhol fraud case. So he was at home in Cohasset. She was going back and forth to DC. Now, I have some unique perspective here because for the first year and a half of my relationship, I lived in Boston and my partner lived in DC, and we were going back and forth 3 to 4 days a week. And that seems to be a similar schedule to what Anna had. She might have even been in DC for longer than a few days. But it takes a toll on you, I can tell you that. All the traveling back and forth. Sometimes I was driving back and forth, and that's a good, 8 to 10-hour drive, and when you're flying, it's a good round trip, 2.5 hour kind of thing, like getting to the airport, getting on the flight, getting out of the airport, getting home. So, this was putting a lot of strain on their marriage. The prosecution really hit that part home, and then they also really focused on the digital and physical evidence in this case, which I'm sure you've heard if you haven't been watching, it's pretty extensive. They have a binder that's about this thick of all the searches that Brian Walsh did on his computer from basically, I think it was the 27th through like the 7th or so of January. I'll try to get into more detail of the dates when we move along. But so they focus on that digital and physical evidence. They also focus on possibly a financial motive. Anna had two life insurance policies. And combined, they were, I think, roughly $2.5 million. So, Connor was telling the jury that they're going to hear that Brian was struggling. And he was. I mean, from what I'm gathering about this guy, he owed $400,000, or actually quite a bit over 400, I think closer to $500,000 for the restitution for the Andy Warhol fraud scheme. And he was paying it off, but it doesn't seem like he had an actual job. He said at some point, well, I'll get into it, but he didn't seem to have an actual job. The bottom line of the prosecution's opening was that, you know, this is a circumstantial case. So phone data searches, trash facility evidence, and honest finances. They also know that they're saying that Brian knew that she was also having an affair and that he killed her, first degree murder, and dismembered her and then dumped her remains. The defense, however, they got up and right off the bat, Larry Tipton said, yes, he lied to the police. He pleaded guilty to that. He misled the police and he improperly conveyed Anna's body. But he did not kill Anna. The defense is saying that she suddenly died in bed and that Brian panicked and did horrible things afterward, but that he did not kill her himself. So, this is called the sudden unexpected death theory. I found it really hard to believe. I'll be honest with you. That's my opinion. They're supposedly gonna have experts that can testify to sudden unexpected death. But as far as we know, and I think the prosecution is gonna bring on witnesses to prove, Anna was in pretty good health. She was young. She was 39, mother of three, traveling, working, living her life. And basically what Brian says happened is on New Year's Eve, he they had a friend over, they had been drinking champagne. She went up to bed, he cleaned up the kitchen and checked his email. Then he went up to bed and nudged her, and she didn't respond, and then he nudged her again, and she didn't respond. He nudged her a third time, and she fell off the bed, but was already dead. So, the thing is, with this case, the judge has explained to the jury that in order to find let me grab my other notes, hold on. In order for the Commonwealth to prove murder 1, they have to prove 5 elements beyond a reasonable doubt. Keep that in mind. Number 1, that Brian Walsh caused Anna Walsh's death. Number 2, that he intended to kill Anna Walsh. Number 3, premeditation. That's a big one. Keep that. Put a pin in it. Number 4, that he didn't act in self-defense, and I think they may struggle with that one. And then number 5, that there were no mitigating circumstances. So, if I'm on the jury and I'm hearing those are the 5 elements, and I'm hearing that he pled guilty to, um, conveying a body and misleading the police, and that he's pleading not guilty to murder 1, I'm going to want the prosecution to hammer home premeditation and that Brian Walsh intended to kill her. And I'm not sure they're doing that yet. But anyway, let's get back to the timeline. Um, okay, so Tipton is telling the jury in opening statements that Brian had no motive and that there was no prior planning, and that the financial angle, it was kind of normal for them. It seemed like they moved a lot of money around. They had a lot of investment properties, though they were renting the house that they were in, and Brian's mom is the one who signed the lease and sometimes paid the rent. All of that aside, it seems to me like this federal case about the art heist was weighing so heavily on them because they didn't want Anna's finances to be taken away because of Brian's misdeeds. And that's the way I'm reading it. Um, Anna's name was on everything. Brian's name was on nothing because of this federal case. So, her credit cards, the life insurance, pretty much everything, all the bills. And so the financial motive to me seems a little bit weak on the Commonwealth side, but they don't have to prove motive, but I feel like it helps the jury understand if there is, some sort of a motive. So that was opening. Let me check in with the comments really quick. Okay, where are we? How about those Google searches? I'm just repeating that one because I agree. One way to handle the chat is just to take a mid break to read through, and then once again at the end. Yeah, I understand. I I want to engage with you all too, but I want to get through the bulk of this case. So I'm going to take breaks. I think that's how I'm planning to do it. I'm going to take breaks after, day 1, after day 2, after day 3, and then we can talk about, observations and things like that. Um, so far the jury has not heard about his pleas in this case. That is true. However, his lawyer in the opening said he lied, and his lawyer also said, well, I don't think he said that he dismembered her, but I think he did say that he lied and misled the cops. So you're absolutely right about that, finding serotonin. Okay, let me grab my notes. All right, so Day one was, outside of the opening statements, they introduced one witness, Sergeant Harrison Schmidt. He's the lead local investigator on Anna's disappearance, and you'll hear later that Massachusetts State Police comes in, and we'll see a lot of familiar names, including Yuri Buchanan, Fanning, Michael Proctor, Tully. There's a bunch more. I'll list them all out when we get to it. But so Harrison takes the stand, and right off the bat, he sort of goes through visiting the Walsh home at 6:30 p.m. on January 4th. The 3 boys are eating McDonald's at the kitchen table. The dog is present. Brian walks him through the house and the yard. He checked the kids' rooms, the basement, the backyard, the pool, and the Volvo, which they pronounce they call it the Vovo, and I'm not sure if that's because of the Massachusetts accent or if that's like a cute name they have for their car, but they call it the Vovo, so I'm gonna call it the Vovo as well. Um, Schmidt says he saw folded plastic sheeting, inside the Volvo. And he also said that he found a trash bag in the basement that he manipulated with his toe, but did not open. And it looked like there were pieces of maybe like carpet sample or something like that in there. One of the other things he noticed is in one of the bedrooms, there was a giant hole in the ceiling. And the plaster piece that had come out of it was just like stuffed in a dresser drawer. Who knows why, but that you can see it in the pictures. They show a bunch of pictures of the house. Um, and then Schmidt says that he goes back to Cohasset PD. He checked Anna's flights. He called Anna's sister. He coordinated a canine search. He also spoke with her friend and former boss Jem Mutlu, who was there on New Year's Eve. That was who they were hanging out with on New Year's Eve. Jem Mutlu. They will testify, um, and that'll come a little bit later. We haven't gotten to Jem yet, but next, the prosecution starts to play these interviews, and I found it really interesting. It was difficult to hear, with the courtroom audio. Oh, there's Ruby snoring. Um, they played 3 separate interviews that they had with Brian Walshe. The first 2 were conducted at his house in the kitchen, and the third one was conducted at the house in the kitchen with his lawyer present. The interesting thing I just want to say really quickly before I move on from this. One of the interesting things about these audio recordings, which, well, there's a lot of interesting things. It sounds like the police are actually doing their job in this case. They've already done 1,000 times more than they did for John O'Keefe in this similar situation, although John was on the lawn and Anna's missing. But in a missing persons case, they did way more police work than they did for a fallen police officer on Brian Albert's front lawn. So in these recorded interviews, I'm so happy they were recorded because we get to sort of see their style, and how they work and how complete they are in this investigation. But what's happening in the background is so chaotic that it's so difficult to understand. There are 3 little boys, and they are all under the age of 6. I won't say their names. But they are running in and out of this interview, screaming, yelling. At one point, one of the boys is yelling "fuck" in the background, and you hear Brian Walshe say, "Oh, I thought he was saying truck. I guess he's not." So the kids are screaming and yelling throughout the entire interviews. And at one point, one of the boys brings in Anna's glasses and just sets it down on the table. I feel like that was so ominous because in that moment, I want you guys to remember she's already dead, as far as we know. They are positing that she died on New Year's Eve, and the first interviews happen on like the 3rd, the 4th. And Brian Walshe, he's being very helpful. He's a talker. Oh my God, he over explains everything. Brian Walshe is literally like the epitome of calm in this chaotic scene, and I don't understand it. And the more I see it and the more I hear him talking throughout this chaos, because he just talks over it. The boys are screaming, the dog is barking, everything's happening all around him. He's in the middle of this art frauds case. His wife is missing. He's responsible for these 3 boys. The dog is barking, everyone's screaming, one of the kids is yelling "fuck," one of them is bringing on his glasses, and he is, like, monotone, calm. It's very, very strange to me. It makes my skin crawl. I don't know how you felt about it, we'll talk about it later. So they play the first day we get through a good portion of this first interview, and, they're just sort of breaking down, like, who's Anna's employer? How often does she travel? Were there, did she say she was going anywhere? Did she miss any flights? Blah, 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 blah. So we didn't finish the January 7th recording. I think that might have been the second recording. Don't quote me on that. But basically, how do I say this? Okay, so they were asking why he delayed reporting her missing. Um, and basically these recordings were highlighting that, you know, it was Anna's employer in DC who first raised alarms. They're the ones who first called Cohasset. It wasn't Brian. Brian called her work first. And then staff contacted Brian and later, building security for a welfare check in on her DC townhouse. Brian's explanation in the recording was that he was distracted by his mother's cataract surgery and didn't want to embarrass Anna at work by calling too early about a missed flight. And he even said something along the lines of, Anna told me in previously, don't embarrass me at work, so he's this like poor schlubby husband who doesn't want to be, calling his wife at work because she said that he embarrasses her. Ugh, I don't know. So we didn't finish that recording on day one. Court adjourned. There was still about half an hour or so of audio to play. So we came back the second day, and we finished with Schmidt's testimony and the rest of these audios. So let me pull up my other notes. Hold on a second. Give me just a second. So at one point, they had asked Brian Walshe if they could look through his devices, and he says yes. This is going to be, I think, an issue going forward in the case, but also if they decide to appeal, because the phones and the computer were just given to the police, and the police had access to them, and they did whatever they wanted to do. And then they got a search warrant. I'm going to try to lay that out a little bit more for you. That's part of Nick Guarino's testimony. But I think, and according to a lot of the law tubers that I've listened to and other lawyers I've spoken with, the fact that they had full access to all these devices before getting a search warrant, and they sort of dug in a little bit later or earlier than they should have, is going to be an issue for appeal. We'll get into it in a little bit. Um, the Verizon records show that the last time Anna's phone interacted with the network was shortly after 3 a.m. on January 2nd in the area of the Walsh home. That's a big deal. And then let's see. So on one of the audio tapes, on one of the audio recordings, Brian Walsh describes that Anna is wearing blue-gray hunter boots, a black jacket, and Hermes watch. And he reiterated that she left Boston for DC on January 1st, which would have been, after he says he tried to wake her up. So keep in mind, he is lying right now. He is lying to the investigators about where she is and what he's done. And this goes on for a while. And again, he's so calm. He doesn't miss a beat. He's a little, he exaggerates quite a bit. He tells a lot of like sidebar stories, but oh my gosh, he's so calm. He says that he didn't know that about any affair. He says she's the breadwinner. He said that the federal case was causing a lot of stress on their marriage, which obviously, and that he said that they were very, very happy, and that they were a team. But the biggest problem were that they were apart and that her job was causing her to miss holidays. So she had missed Thanksgiving, and she didn't get into Boston until Christmas night. Um, she had missed her flights, she said, and one of the flights had been canceled, she said, not true. But she was actually sort of hanging out with a boyfriend. His name is Fasto. He's going to come up later. He's actually going to be testifying tomorrow. So these first, 3 days or so have been a lot of information, a lot of tech stuff. But Fasto is on the witness stand tomorrow. So if you're going to watch any day, I would say tune in tomorrow. I think court starts at 9:30. So at this point, let's see, I think it's probably January 5th or 6th. Don't quote me on that. But that's when the MSP gets involved. So Guarino and Connor Keefe, digital forensic specialists, start looking through all the devices. They went through all the phones and the computers. The cell phone Brian was using looked up William Fastow on Christmas Day when Anna had missed or said her flight was canceled and was driving up from DC. So put a pin in that one. Let's see. And then on December 7th is a very important day. It's been brought up a lot over the past 2 days of testimony, because on December 27th, I think I said December 7th, but I meant December 27th, 2 days after Christmas. Brian's MacBook and using his own Apple ID researched, quote, best strategies to divorce for a man and best states to divorce for a man, DC divorce laws. So I found it interesting because I think the Commonwealth obviously is trying to say, so on the 27th, he had somehow found out about this affair and was going to try to divorce her. And that would have been the motive. Something happened after she came home, and that would have been the motive to kill her. I think the defense is going to have something else to say about that, though. So stay tuned. Um, let's see. Okay, so let's get into a little bit of the internet history of that MacBook. So, beginning January 1st, 4:54 a.m., Brian searched, or a user on these devices searched, quote, best way to dispose of a body. And he went to, or they went to similar websites. At 6:24 a.m., how long for someone missing to inherit? Found that one to be interesting. How long missing to be dead? Can you throw away body parts? He looked at an article that said, is it possible to clean DNA off of a knife? I also want to bring up, this was sort of dropped in there and it has not been covered yet. And I found it incredibly interesting. One of the searches that Brian Walsh did asked about um, blood containing HIV. No one has mentioned anything about either of these people, Anna or Brian, having HIV, but it seems like he was either concerned about it or it was a cross-reference search, meaning Google or Yahoo or whatever search engine he was using told him to look at something else. But I found it just popped up out of nowhere, and I thought, whoa, that's a big one right there. So I don't know. I guess we put a pin in that one too. Let's see. Here's a 10:28 a.m. search. The user of my wife's credit card. She is missing. Best way to dispose of body parts after a murder. So, as far as I understand it, on December 29th, is that right? December 29th. That date might be wrong. It's somewhere between December 27th and 29th, or December 27th and the 1st. He first searches about murder. This is going to become very important later, because the defense has a lot to say about these searches. So Guarino is going to testified that numerous website searches on January 1st, cleaning blood with ammonia, bleach, hydrogen peroxide, websites, better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash them. One website, you want to get away with murder, use a special detergent. These internet searches continue into January 2nd. How long does Lowe's keep security footage? That's important. How to saw a body, how to dismember a body. Can you be charged with murder without a body? So there's murder again. That's really important. Keep in mind. He also looked up websites for apartment complexes in Brockton and Chelsea. One in particular was, I think it's called Chapman West in Brockton. Don't quote me on that. It was really hard to hear. Let's see. Where did my notes go? Oh, let me come back to it. Okay. So let's see. Brian also told the police that he had misplaced his phone and not found it until the afternoon of January 2nd. We will later discover that that was another lie. When the phone was examined, it had been connected to a power source and it had been unlocked 4 times with either a face or a passcode. Location data also showed it remained in the Walsh home until January 2nd, but there was another phone in the residence that belonged to one of the kids. And this phone, this is so fucked up. This phone traveled to Walgreens in Cohasset, then a liquor store near Brian Walsh's mom's home, then to a CVS in Danvers, a Lowe's in Danvers, and a Stop and Shop in Swampscott. So police then found all the surveillance video from those several locations, and it shows a dude that looks like Brian Walsh. Sometimes he's wearing a mask, sometimes he's not. At Walgreens, he's buying Band-Aids. At CVS, he buys hydrogen peroxide. At Stop and Shop, he buys ammonia. At Lowe's, he buys a Tyvek suit, cutting instruments like a hacksaw, and he spends around $400. And then he also went to Home Goods and he bought scented candles and area rugs. And then Home Depot, he buys cleaning supplies, 20 pounds of baking soda, a mop, a bucket, and a hatchet. Brian's phone was located on January 3rd, also near an apartment complex in Brockton, which is the apartment complex I just told you about. I think it's called Chapman West. And in the surveillance footage, they see someone who looks like Brian Walsh walking to a dumpster and putting some stuff in it. So, he's also on January 5th, Brian's phone is near dumpsters and a trash compactor near his mom's apartment in Swampscott. On January 9th, police went to those dumpsters and they took a trash compactor and a dumpster to a facility in Peabody and found an Hermes watch, hunter boots, a black coat, and Anna Walsh's COVID vaccination card. Remember, we had to carry those cards around with us? They also found rugs, a Tyvek suit, hammer, shears, snips, a hatchet, and a hacksaw. And they took all of that into evidence and examined it for DNA. DNA that was found on those items belonged to Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe. Well, I should say, they found DNA on the Tyvek suit that belonged to Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe. Anna's DNA was also on the rugs, the hatchet, and the hacksaw. So those are all the things that they're saying happened, which is kind of crazy. And again, if I'm sitting on the jury, I'm like, what the? This guy friggin' chopped up his wife and killed her. And but the issue here is that they have to prove that he planned to do all of that. And I don't think they are doing such a great job of that. Um, okay, so I had some quick before I want to get into the third interview that happened on day 2 of trial. And I want to go through that with some of my observations. And then I want to talk a little bit to you all and see what you're thinking so far. And then we'll get into day 3. Okay, so day 2 starts with 30 minutes left of the audio, right? Schmidt is still on the stand. Here are my observations. Again, he's far too calm. He's using past tense constantly. He's like, we were happy. She was amazing, that kind of stuff. And he does it throughout. And it could just be he's thinking about the past, but I think we've seen in a bunch of true crime documentaries that when someone is using past tense, it means that they think that they're not here anymore. So that's what I'm thinking. In this third interview, the police are really starting to press him about whether he did something to Anna. He says, absolutely not. They were a team. This family doesn't work without her. And then he also does this weird thing when they ask him these hard questions. He just on repeat says, my wife, about 50 times. I mean, that's probably, an exaggeration, but he says, my wife would do this. My wife is the love of my life. My wife and I, my wife, this family doesn't work without my wife, my wife, my wife. And I was like, dude, overkill. Oh, that's probably too soon for that. And in this audio, this is the puppy, they have a German Shepherd puppy, another German Shepherd type dog in a case involving the Massachusetts State Police. But this puppy is barking its head off in the background. And this is another personal thing for me because I owned a dog walking company for 13 years. As an owner, as somebody who loves their animal, loves their dog, and who understands that in order for a dog to be calm and happy, they have to have parameters. They have to have some sort of discipline. And I don't mean discipline in like corporal punishment. I mean, like an occasional no, that kind of thing. Or at least they're clicker trained or treat trained or whatever it might be. This guy is sitting in this interview and he is talking about his wife being missing and how maybe, and the police are asking him if he did anything to her. The dog is barking its head off. And he doesn't bat an eye. He just keeps talking in that weird monotone, calm voice that he has. And no one tells the dog to be quiet. No one takes the dog into another room. No one says, hey, give me just a second. We want to, I want to hear what you're saying. I want to understand what's going on. Let's make sure the dog is calm so that we can have a good conversation about this. It never happens. The dog continues to like scream, yelp in the background, and it's unnerving. And this is the interview where Brian's white collar lawyer is in the room. She's the only female in the room. Brian's mother is in the other room, as I understand it, with the children. And I believe Yuri Buchanan was in there. That was either in the second interview or the third interview. But at one point, Brian's mom was in the other room and she was in there with Yuri Buchanan and she was being questioned with the kids, which I don't know. Again, it's like, why are they not separating the kids? Why are they allowing the kids to hear all of this? And that's, I don't know. It's really sad to me, including the fact that their mother has been killed. We're not sure how. and dismembered, more than likely in their own home, more than likely while the kids were there. And no one, of course, the police don't know that right now. Brian Walsh knows it. The police don't know it. But at some point, you've got to like start thinking about these kids. They're just being allowed to run in and out of the room and interject themselves and overhear, what's going on. They're all under the age of 6. I mean, come on, you guys. Like, I know that there weren't a lot of women in the room, but can somebody just take, you got a lot of you guys are fathers, like do something, help the kids. Um anyway, so after the audio, the judge did something. Okay, let me just say one thing about the judge. Again, Diane Frenier. She's amazing. I have a huge crush on her. She's beautiful. She's in charge. She's got this courtroom. She knows this case in and out. She knows it better than the lawyers do, I think. Um, she doesn't interrupt them. She's not like sitting in front of the mic and being like, sighing, or we have to take a short day, or this poor jury, or blah, blah, blah. Like she's there to do a job. And I so appreciate her. And I so wish she had been on the Karen Reed trial, because I think it would have been a very, very different trial with the honorable Judge Diane Fournier. Anyway, after this audio plays, she reads an email into the record as a stipulation. And now that means that the defense and the prosecution have agreed on some of the facts that are being presented to the jury, right? So this is an email from a man named Richard Walker, and it's basically 2 emails that are ransom notes saying that Anna fucked up and owes them a lot of money. And if the money isn't paid, she's going to die. And I think the inference is that Brian Walsh sent those emails, but the IP is registered in Nigeria. Um, the defense will have something to say about this later. It's a weird thing to present to the jury if it means nothing, and I'm not quite sure exactly what it means. There are a lot of things on this case. I talked about it in the episode I did with Rebecca about the article that I read in the New York Post that was sent to us from one of our favorites, about the building that Anna was a project manager of, and how there were some kind of shady dealings that were going on there. There's a lot of that stuff on this case, and more of it's going to come up in testimony. So hold on to your butts. Let's see. So, and then on this third interview, Michael Proctor enters the chat, y'all. We hear his voice. He introduces himself. He's not very active in it. He does come up at one point and he says like one line, but he's there. Great. Let's see. This is the interview where the police start to ask Brian about his errands. And he says something along the he's focused on getting milk for the kids. He just keeps talking about the focus was the milk. Um, but he also talks about he brought alcohol wipes for the kids. And then the police hit him with, we found searches about disposing of a body on the iPad. And the iPad, I want you to understand, is the oldest child's iPad. And Brian is like, I had no idea. So they start pressing him about this. The oldest kid was in his room with the iPad at the time that these searches happen. And the cops are like, so, I have a 4-year-old kid. This kid's 6 years old. I don't really think he could spell these words and sentences. It sounds like, I think it might be DeChico, who's another name that we recognize, interviewing him. And so he's confronting him with these searches and he's like, how do you explain it? And Brian's like, I had no idea. I don't use that iPad. And it feels like he's literally blaming his 6-year-old for making these like insane searches about, disposing of a body. Like they break down the timing of the searches and it's like, does a dishwasher remove blood from a knife? And at that point, Proctor speaks and he says, these queries continue on January 2nd, January 3rd. So Proctor comes up. He's not a big deal. The prosecution isn't going to call him, but he is on the defense's witness list. So that should be interesting. Yuri Buchanan has been in the courtroom the past couple of days. And then Schmidt testifies that they went back to Cohasset. And at that point, that's when they get an arrest warrant and they come to Brian's lawyer's house and they arrest him at Brian's lawyer's house. Schmidt, they also show pictures to the jury at this point of Brian Walsh's hands, and he has lacerations on his fingers, on his thumb mainly. Um, And then we hear another familiar voice. Brian Tully also enters the chat. Accompanies the CERT team to a warehouse, which is the like a trash transfer station, and that's where they inspect the dumpsters. And they show pictures of Anna Walsh's clothing found in the dumpsters inside a trash bag, her Vax card, and then we start to intro sort of the credit card statements and how there was no activity on Anna Walsh's card after 12/31. So that's where we are on day 2. We start getting into all the searches, with Guarino, but that sort of moves over into day 3, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I wanna hear from you all. If you were sitting on this jury right now, what would you be thinking? What are you thinking about Brian Walsh at this moment in time? Let's see. Oh, good, Amy. I'm glad that you can listen while you're waiting for your kiddo. Oh, what's this? Oh, and I think I put the chat on a slower mode because I expected myself to be slower, um, in responding to everybody. Weird he stipulated she's dead. What do you mean by that, honey kid? So here's the crazy thing, finding serotonin, and this is gonna come up a little bit. This came up in one of the audio recordings. They ask him about, like, what he does for work, and he says that he is the co-owner of a cybersecurity startup, and I'm like, "Is this another scam?" Because how is this guy involved in cybersecurity, and he doesn't know that he's leaving this, like, breadcrumb, this trail of these thousands of searches about how to get rid of his wife's body. He's either the dumbest guy ever or he's got that, like, sort of privilege where he doesn't think anything's gonna happen to him. Because I don't honestly think that he thought anything was really gonna happen to him. I don't think he thought he was gonna go to jail for the art heist. I think he thought, "Well, I'm just gonna have to pay off this $450,000 or whatever it is." Um, he doesn't even turn on incognito mode. I know, right? He doesn't like it's not like he's not using a VPN, he's not doing anything. It's like Google, Yahoo, like he doesn't understand how like your Apple ID works. He's getting messages from Anna's phone. So it's like he knew about the affair. He was getting like I think they were we haven't quite worked it out yet because in the audio recordings, he says something along the lines of iMessenger. So there's iMessage or there's Messenger. Messenger is Facebook, private message. iMessage is, your iPhone or your laptop. So, but he was getting some of those messages. I'm going to assume it was coming from her socials because that's what the cops were talking about at the time. But he's dumb. Something's wrong with the guy. I don't know. Um, He doesn't even turn on yeah. You're probably seeing my YouTube channel and not the name from Facebook, but I'm Amy that you met at the True Crime. Oh, hey, Amy. Oh, I'm so glad you're here. That's amazing. I'm so happy to see you. Um, yeah, so Honey Kid, his defense is saying that he walked into the bedroom and found his wife dead and then panicked because of all the shit they had going on and then dismembered her body, got rid of her body, and then spent many, many days lying to the cops about what he had done and where he had been. So what they have to prove in this case is first degree murder. And in order to prove first degree murder, they have to prove it was premeditated. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think the Commonwealth's going to have a hard time doing that because of these searches. The defense is doing a really great job that it happened, like the cross examination happened today of Guarino. It started yesterday, happened today as well. And Tipton is really good. He's picking apart all the things the cops did wrong again, which they did an amazing investigation, but it was just littered with, issues and problems and things that they did wrong. Guarino, he's a complicated character. So when he's cross-examining Guarino today, there's a lot of tell me the date of when this search happened. Did this search include any questions about murder or searches about murder? And, could it be that basically the defense is laying it out for the jury that he panicked and got rid of his wife's body, right? But he did not murder her. And they're doing a great job. They're doing a great job showing that to the jury. Um, Easy to pick on that group of LEO. Yeah. I mean, these guys, when I heard Yuri actually went to DC to go check out her condo and interview some people, and Michael Proctor stayed back, and was on the investigating team. But all these guys are across Karen Reed, Sandra Birchmore, and this case. And if they did anything to fuck it up, like they did with Karen Reed, this guy's probably gonna get off. Now, Rebecca and I have talked about this a lot. I believe in a defendant's constitutional rights to a fair trial. I believe in due process. I believe that if the cops did mess this up, he again, he has a right to a fair trial. So I am not convinced that it's murder one. I'll say that. I'm not sure they should be asking for that charge. Um because let's say let's say that he let's say they got into an argument, and let's say they were fighting, um, or something happened in the heat of the moment. You don't need a long time for premeditation, but based on the searches that he was making, it doesn't look like that he was wanting to murder her. It does look like that he was trying to figure out how to get rid of her body. It doesn't look like that he was trying to murder her, even though he does, ask the questions about murder kind of early on. I don't know. Anybody else have thoughts on it? Well, can I remember to guard your privacy? I because this is our first live, which again, Rebecca and I are going to be doing these together, but I wanted to get the ball rolling to see, how this would work. Um, and I do, as far as community guidelines go, I know that a lot of other YouTubers talk about words that can't be used in chat and things like that. And, words that I'm saying are probably going to get flagged. So it's something that I'm going to have to learn as I go. But if any of you have any advice, I don't know if you sit in on any other chats and, for other law tubers or other YouTubers, maybe Turtle Boy, something like that. I feel like Turtle Boy says whatever the fuck he wants and it's fine. But then I see law tubers being like, don't say the M word, because we're going to get flagged. Meh. Andrea Burkhart. I've heard that. I'm gonna have to check it out. I haven't seen hers. I watch a lot of Peter Tragos. I watch some Melanie Little. I watch Nurse Kim and Emily. And I try to tune into Turtle Boy stuff every once in a while, but sometimes that's just, complete and utter chaos that makes me feel crazy. So I stay away from that. I let Rebecca deal with that. She's always like, "Oh my god, you should have seen the live last night." And I'm like, "No, I can't. It's too much." Ugh. Okay. Let's see. Let's try to get into day 3. Let me see. I'm a little congested. I'm sorry if I'm sniffling in your ear. Our kids have been sick. I am not sick yet, and I'm hoping not to be. Okay. Day 3. This is when, let's see. Um So basically, there were a ton of witnesses today, and there was a lot of cross-examination from Larry Tipton of Guarino about these text messages. I am trying desperately to see where Larry Tipton is going. I think he made a great point today. I would say watch the cross-examination of Guarino by Larry Tipton if you get a chance today. It's usually on the Court TV feed or on Boston 25. It's really dry stuff because it's he's got a binder, like I said, it's this big, and it's got 3,000 pages in it or some shit like that. And it's all the searches that Brian made, but they're all the searches from, I believe it's the 27th through the 7th or so of January. Don't quote me on that. And so they're cherry picking, the prosecution, when they're asking Guarino about them, they're cherry picking all of these searches that are for instance, we talked about on the episode with Rebecca, we talked about the porn search that was basically cheating wife gets impregnated by someone and dies or something like that. Larry Tipton has to ask Guarino, "Did you look at Pornhub? Did you watch the video?" And he's being snarky on the stand like he usually is. I hate his attitude. He's laughing a lot, and I'm like, "Dude, a woman is dead, and this guy's, maybe going to prison for life. Can we have a little bit more seriousness about this?" But Guarino was a pretty bad witness. There was a lot he didn't know. He's been out on leave. I heard that he got into some like a car accident or something, which I feel very badly for him, because I think he was very badly injured and he's still recovering from that. But this is your job. You need to know this, huge 3-ring binder inside and out. And the amount of times that he said, "I don't recall," or "I don't remember," or "I don't know," was just kind of appalling to me. They've got to get better state trooper witnesses, the Commonwealth. It's annoying. And on that subject, the woman, oh God, what's her name? Does anybody remember the name of the ADA, the female prosecutor? Oh, I mean, Lally used to drive me nuts with his, like, weird monotone and his, like, sighing and, all that. This woman is Lally incarnate, but if she were, like, a mall greeter or, like a samples person at, like, a Costco. She's awful. I feel so bad saying that. It's my opinion, obviously, but, oh my god, she's like she's like, "Trooper, can you read me the title? Great. Can you tell me what it said? Great." And it's just like, oh god, she's so obnoxious. I cannot stand her. Um, the fact that he didn't write a report is shocking. Yeah, I think what's even more shocking, finding serotonin is that he didn't make an index or a key or anything because the jury's gonna get this 3-ring binder, and they're gonna have to shuffle through it, and Tipton made a great point today that there are, like, I think he said there are somewhere around over 3,000 records in this file, in this binder, but they're duplicates. And how is the jury supposed to tell when something is a duplicate or not? There's no key in this binder. In fact, there were about 1,800 searchers or something like that. But the jury isn't going to understand that. And I think the judge was kind of pissy about it. She called a sidebar right after that came out in testimony, and I think she's thinking about it too. So we'll see what happens with that. Um, so let's see. Okay, we are on day 3. Bear with me. Lots of witnesses today. Lots of evidence too. Trash bags, blood in the Vovo, travel life insurance. I think the theme for today is basically corroboration. The prosecution is trying to tie Anna to the trash stream, showing blood in the family Vovo, proving she never made it onto her flights or ride shares, and sort of quantifying the life insurance motive. So we heard from this isn't in any particular order, but we heard from, let's see, Guarino, a lift specialist. We heard from William Foley, who is US Customs and Border Protection, and he was talking about how she didn't get on certain flights or that she did get on international flights. And then we heard from JetBlue's security and keeper of records. He was going over flight data. We heard from Officer Greg Lawrence, which I think it's pronounced Lawrence, but it's spelled Lowrance. Um, he was the first missing persons report encounter. We also heard from a canine guy, which made me happy. Patrick Reardon. He talked about the search, and his dog is named Einstein, and I love that. And Einstein searched and didn't find anything behind the home. We heard about Peter Capozzoli, who is the landlord. He owned the Cohasset rental. And then we heard from life insurance policy folks. So there was a scientist who processed the Volvo and then the trash at the Republic Services in Peabody. Um, the Volvo findings were they found 5 blood samples from the driver's seat controls, a second row passenger mat, the back of a folded down third row seat, and 2 separate trunk mats. There were numerous light blue disposable gloves, 2 on the passenger side floor, a pair in the Ziploc bag, and 16 more in the center console, 2 child car seats still installed in the vehicle. At the trash facility, this is where a bulk of it was. We just went over most of that, but um, they were sorting through bags from a trash bin connected to Brian. So this forensic scientist meticulously cataloged contents, including honest personal items, which we went over. Um, Towels, gauze, tissues, bathrobe, slippers, some other textiles that had red brown stains on them. They're obviously implying blood. Hold on a sec, I have to cough, and I don't wanna do it in your ear. Ooh, my voice is going. Okay. So, okay, let's see. They found the Tyvek suit, safety goggles, a hammer, wire snips, a hatchet, a hacksaw, and these all had red-brown stains on them. They found hydrogen peroxide, a tarp, and protective booties. Um, on the cross-examination, Tipton was, like, sort of suggesting that contamination happened, which is, that's his job. He was pointing out that the bags went through a trash facility and might have contacted other materials or a damp floor before they were processed. An animal might have gotten into the dumpster and might have died and bled on things. So he was grasping at straws, but it's his job. As far as the rideshare and travel records, I find this interesting because Brian told the cops that she took a taxi or an Uber from the home on December 31st. Lyft was testifying that she did not take any Lyft rides between December 30th and January 8th. Uber showed 2 trips, December 30th, but no trips at all from December 30th through January 8th beyond those. So he lied, but we knew he lied because his defense told us that he lied. So I don't know how helpful that was. Um, the US Customs and Border Protection, they went through her travel to Dublin. She went to Dublin with her lover. What's his name? I just lost his name. William Fastow. Thank you, brain. And that she had also gone to see her mother in Serbia. She with JetBlue, Thomas Menino Jr. was the witness, and he walked through her flight bookings. She had multiple Reagan to Boston, so Reagan International to Boston Logan reservations, late December 2022 into January 2023. She used the December 30th Reagan to Boston flight. Then she's a no-show for all scheduled flights on January 3rd, 13th, 16th, January 27th, and January 30th. Um, so basically the jurors are hearing every single movement she could have made, and it sounds like she didn't make any movements after January 31st. Let's see. There were a few sergeants from Swampscott, Officer Michael Kenyon. He found a trash bin and compactor and escorted that bin and compactor to Peabody. Sergeant Amy Waterman with the Massachusetts State Police testified about traveling with Michael Lopes to Anna's DC townhouse on January 7th. It's a 3-story townhome. It's neat, tidy. She had already been preparing for the kids to come and live with her. So I don't know where we are in the conversation about if they were getting divorced or not, but she already had their rooms ready upstairs for them to come. There was no men's clothing present. They got some travel paperwork while they were there, and there was no car at the residence and no sign of Anna. Sergeant Patrick Reardon, who is the Cohasset K9, we already went through what he went through. Officer Greg Lowrance from Cohasset, like I said, he was the first officer dispatched, and he described Brian as calm and collected, giving basic information to complete a missing person report and telling him Anna flew on JetBlue and normally FaceTimed him frequently when traveling. He didn't go inside the home though on the first encounter. And then, like I mentioned, Peter Capozzoli testified. He explained their lease terms, initial 6 months at a discounted rate of $4,800 a month, which, I mean, can we get on the same page here that rent is just astronomical and ridiculous? And then the rent went up to $5,000. Brian's mother paid up front and confirmed the plan was eventually for the family to move to DC and for Diana Walsh to take over the lease. Diana Walsh is Brian Walsh's mom. She's been in court quite a bit, which I find interesting because she might be called as a witness, and I don't think she's supposed to be sitting in there listening to testimony. I don't know if she's been in there for the past few days, but she was there in the pretrial hearings when they were actually discussing her, which is fucked up. They had the life insurance witness, Mark Silvaggi, and he talked about how Anna had a 20-year term policy for 1 million, a whole life policy for 250, and that both went into effect on May 17th, 2021, with Brian as the sole beneficiary. Um, Here's an interesting thing. The defense is going to have a hard time saying that Anna just died suddenly because she scored a number 1, which is the best health rating, meaning she was seen as extremely low risk and the premiums on her life insurance were very low. So, um, let's see. Guarino came back, I think. Yeah, he did. Um, for more recross, which so I think Guarino's going to have to be available like he was in the Karen Reed trial, especially in the second trial, to answer more questions. So Tipton was highlighting that there were diamond ring searches just before the divorce related queries, implying Brian was still planning gifts for Anna right before she died. Um, he also probed how the search engines worked, raising issues of redirects and limits of the data. Guarino didn't search far back in time. He also brought up the search warrant and the timing of the search warrant, and basically was letting the jury know that the cops could have done more and chose not to. And I think that's sort of a theme. I really, really liked Schmidt, the first officer, the lead investigator from the local police, from Cohasset. I thought he was a really good guy. He answered questions really well, but there were certain things that he chose not to push further on. So when he was in the basement doing the house search on the very first night with Brian, and he saw that bag that had the carpet samples in it. Brian had given him access. He said he could search the house. He chose not to open that bag. He also saw the tarp in the back of the car, and he was given access to the car to search it by Brian, and he chose not to look at it. So there were these areas where they just were like, I don't want to push too far. And I think that that's sort of his MO. He doesn't want to go push too far. So there were a lot of other things he could have looked at that he chose not to. He chose not to get another search warrant to look deeper into some of these things. Um, so let's see. Ann Yoss, that's her name, the prosecutor, the one that I was talking about that's sort of like Adam Lally, but really chipper. She's sort of like if anyone's a Harry Potter fan, she reminded me of Umbridge. Does that make sense? But she's doesn't look like Umbridge, but she speaks and acts like Umbridge, and it was really getting under my skin. Um, on recross, she pointed the jurors to a January 1st search. So this would be technically the day Anna died. I'm assuming she died sometime early in the morning. So I'll quote this. Quote, "Your spouse is missing and you want a divorce. Hello, divorce." End quote. And she was trying to recenter the narrative that by the early hours of January 1st, Brian is already thinking about a world where Anna is missing and he's free to divorce her. So that was day 3. And like I said, tomorrow's going to be, I would assume, a little fiery because Fastow is taking the stand, and I would imagine that cross-examination is going to be a little crazy. MCD. MCD. Honey Kid, what do you mean by MCD? Am I missing something? Is she the Jennifer Coolidge sounding one? Yeah, that's another good one. It's like she's like a cross between Jennifer Coolidge and Dolores Umbridge. His mother has come up so often in the interviews and the background stuff. She really has. And one of the things that I didn't mention, this is obviously going to come up later, I think, and it'll probably involve her testimony, but the mother hired a private investigator to look into Anna in DC, and she paid for it because they thought she was having an affair. These people, I don't know. My observations. Oh, Ruby's having a dream. She's kicking me. Hi, Bubba. Do you want to say hi to the people? I have to wake you up. Come here, Rubes. Ooh. There's the Ruby Jean. Oh, look how sleepy she is. She's like, Mom, please don't do this to me. Look at that. Look at that face. Okay, go back to sleep. My observations, this is my opinion. I think Brian Walshe is a psychopath. He doesn't show any emotion. And I'm one of those people, I covered the Pamela Smart case. And that was like the MO for everyone who was against Pamela Smart. She's angry, she doesn't cry enough, she doesn't show enough emotion, that stupid bow in her hair, right? Women, defendants who are women get that all the time. They're not showing enough emotion. They're showing too much emotion. With this guy, yes, thank you, Ruby. With this guy, there is no emotion in his voice when he's talking about his missing wife, who he has just dismembered. Let's be clear. When he's talking to the police, when we're listening to his voice on these audio recordings, these interviews with the police, he has already dismembered her and thrown her body in a dumpster or somewhere. We don't actually know where her body is. Her body's never been found. He took a hacksaw to his wife's body and lied to the police about it. And he has no emotion in his voice. Even when he's like, we were the best team. My wife is the love. My wife is the love of my life. We are so great together. Blah, 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 blah. No emotion. I don't hear any love. I don't hear anything besides monotone, first of all. At least with Pam Smart, you knew when she was angry. She was very angry, and she should have been. And just sidebar. I just put out an episode today on the In-Between that is an update on the Pamela Smart case because her lawyers just sent me her new habeas petition. And the habeas petition is going to be filed within I think like a week or so. It's asking for a new trial or a new sentencing for Pamela Smart. And it's really, really, really strong. And I'm really proud of the work because the investigation I did in season 1 on the In-Between is the basis for a lot of the points. There are 5 very strong points in this habeas. And the investigation that I did came up with some of those points. And I've been working with her lawyers. And I don't know. I don't know what New Hampshire is going to do, but I did a big update. Go listen to it. It came out at 7:00 tonight, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Let me know what you think. The Pamela Smart case is obviously controversial. But I think at the end of the day, I won't say, I don't ever talk about whether I think she's guilty or innocent. What I do talk about is this woman is serving life without parole for an accomplice to murder charge. And one of the points in the habeas petition is that the judge in the case, Judge Douglas Gray, was not mandated to sentence her to that, but he said he was. So everyone believed that he was. All of the men were teenage boys who killed her husband, Greg Smart. They were all paroled over a decade ago, and in some cases, over 2 decades ago. Pamela Smart is sitting in prison and will be there for the rest of her life without parole unless New Hampshire hears this case. So, go listen to it, please. If you do want to send over tips, which I appreciate, and so does Rebecca, I'm just going to put the link in the comments. And again, we really love you guys and appreciate you. And sometimes I'm buying groceries with those tips, and I appreciate that. Let's see. There we go. I get Donna Adelson vibes from what I've heard about her so far, but I guess we'll see. The mom, yeah. Yes, for sure. She's like, my baby boy. My baby boy is innocent. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm going to pay whoever I can to get him out of this. And yeah, the whole thing's just a little bit sketchy. He's so strange to me. Going back to my observations about him. So he's, like, very calm, collected, very monotone, doesn't show any emotion. anytime in court, um, which I thought that's why I think it's interesting that they actually, they were testing to see if he was mentally able to stand trial, and I can understand why. And the guy is definitely coming off as a psychopath. Because who in their right mind, like, let's say, like, you, me, anybody, we go into our bedroom at night and go to, like, talk to our spouse, and our spouse falls out of the bed and is dead, who doesn't call 911? I understand there was a lot going on in their lives, and I know that's what the defense is gonna say. The defense is gonna be like, "He had to come up with $400,000. He didn't have any money. Everything was in Anna's name. She was having an affair, blah, 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 blah." At the end of the day, you're not gonna get away with it, first of all. At the end of the day, this is a human life, someone who you are saying is the love of your life, the someone who is the mother of your young children, who is your teammate. You call 911. I understand that you're gonna be looked at as a suspect, but if you didn't do it, you didn't do it. Now, what you've done is, if it's true that your wife fell out of bed dead and you panicked and spent 2 to 3 days dismembering and disposing of her body, like, what are you expecting, dude? I mean, only a psychopath would be able to do that. It's very reminiscent. Rebecca mentioned this in one of her episodes. It's very reminiscent of the Durst case from, um oh man, I just lost the documentary. What was that documentary called? The Jinx, which is one of my favorite documentaries. It's very reminiscent of the Durst case. He pretty much got away with murder, and I tend to believe that I can't imagine the jury is gonna find, I mean, I don't know. These searches are so damning. They really are. And the jury's probably already thinking like, "What the fuck are we doing here? This is a murder, what the hell?" But if they're good jurors and they're sitting there listening to all the evidence, I think that it can be proven that it wasn't premeditated. I don't know if it was premeditated. I haven't made that opinion yet. I don't have an opinion on that yet. But right now, if I were sitting on that jury, I'd be like, not sure this was premeditated. And that's a big one for murder one. So, anybody have any thoughts? We should probably start wrapping it up. It's been over an hour. Um, Hello from Australia, sleepy darling dog. Thanks, Maisie. Yeah, she's so sleepy. This is what she does most of the day. Like, when I'm working this is my office, even though it looks like a bedroom. I have a little office in here. She's just sleeping behind me, all cuddled up. She's very sweet. She's my little Velcro dog. Um, this is so great, you guys. Thanks for everybody who picked up memberships too. I think I'm reading this right. Aaron Ruggiero, is that right? Looks like you became a member. Jenna Robertson became a member. Love it. Thank you guys so much. We're still working it out, obviously. I'll reiterate what I said at the top. Thanks again to everybody who's contributing and everyone who's supporting us. The best thing you can do is to comment, like, subscribe, share, tell your friends about us if they like true crime. Rebecca and I are good friends who like to sit down and talk about the psychology of what's happening in these cases. And for me, I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to be one, although I play one on TV. Um, but Pamela Smart's case is what really started me on this journey. And it started me on this journey because I felt I needed to right a wrong that I had done. And that wrong was believing what my family and friends and the local media told me when I was 15 years old, which is that Pam was a lying slag who had sex with a 16-year-old kid and then convinced him to kill her husband. And I believe that. I didn't think twice about Pamela Smart from the age of 15 to I think like 35, almost 40. And then I saw a documentary called Captivated that made me realize I had been wrong. And in that moment, I felt so much guilt about the way that I had perceived this human being that I watched the documentary. I watched it one more time. I made sure that I had all my information correct. And I sat down and I hand wrote a letter to Pamela Smart and I said, "I'm sorry." And that started conversations between the 2 of us, which then turned into a friendship. And I do think of her as one of my friends. I love her. I know she's a complicated character. I know she's angry, but I'll be honest with you, I am one of those people that always gets accused of having resting bitch face. I'm I would have been angry too, and I think any woman in that situation would have been angry too. If you believed that you were innocent and you believe that people weren't fighting in the right way for you, and they weren't. I urge you to go listen to the episode that I just put out because this habeas petition, her lawyers did so many things wrong in that trial, and they really didn't do a great job representing her. And so I have to say, in comparison to the Karen Reed trial, the Brian Walsh trial, I'm so happy to see defense lawyers who know what they're doing and know how to fight for their client. Because the thing I hate to see the most are lawyers that just phone it in and who are like, meh. I saw that in the Veronica Rodriguez case, which was a second season or so that I covered on the In Between podcast. Her lawyer was just phoning it in. He didn't want to piss off the judge. He didn't want to piss off the other attorneys. And she was convicted and she went to jail for coming forward about her own sexual assault. So, my observations are that I'm not sure if he did kill her, although I'm leaning toward, yeah, he probably did. Um, and he's such a dummy because he's supposed to be like this cyber security expert, and he's sitting there on, Google being like, "Can I get blood off of a knife if I put it in a dishwasher after I've dismembered my body and thrown her in my wife's body and thrown her in a dumpster?" He literally learned how to do all this stuff through YouTube. Where we are right now. Happy to be here. And YouTube's amazing, come on. I learned so much. Anytime I need to do, like, a DIY, like, woodworking project, I'm putting together these flower boxes and these, like, resin wood things, for Christmas. I'm learning it on YouTube. So, you can learn a lot on YouTube, including what Brian Walsh learned, which is really sad. But anyway, I just wanna thank everybody for being here. Thanks for coming to my first live. The next one will probably be with Rebecca. I'm hoping it will be with Rebecca because I'm losing my voice because I'm talking too much. Um, and again, thanks for everybody who sent in tips. Thanks for everybody who signed up for memberships. We love you all. We appreciate you. Please keep it coming. And if you have any cases that you want us to talk about, you can email. Hold on, I got to look up our email because it's new. Somethingsoffpod@gmail. I'll put that in the chat as well. Somethingsoffpod@gmail. So, if you would like to email us about cases, you can go to our Facebook page, which is a private group. It's not a page, it's a group for listeners of the Something's Off podcast. You can leave us suggestions there. You can email us suggestions. Um, and please hit that subscribe button and please share the videos. And I love you all and I hope you have a great night and we will see you live soon.